Let me direct your attention one more time back to the book of Isaiah. And as we've been looking at Isaiah chapter 9, we're going to jump back a couple of chapters before that. Go back to Isaiah 7. We just heard Matthew quote from Isaiah 7. And it's important for us to look at that passage because it gives us a little bit more understanding and context for the words of Isaiah in this section of his writings. What he mentions in Isaiah 7 and then moves on and mentions in more detail in Isaiah 9, and then from there goes into greater detail in Isaiah 11 and kind of fills in for us and helps us to see as we look at these writings who he's talking about and what this person, this son, this child is going to be. So to consider our thoughts this morning, we titled our sermon, "The King is Coming." And as I have us look at Isaiah chapter 7, we're going to see right off the bat that, well, we need the true king. We need the true king. In Isaiah chapter 1, or chapter 7, verse 1, it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah. So Ahaz is the king of Judah. That Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, king of Remaliah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. And it was told the house of David, that is the ruling court of Ahaz, king of Judah, it was told the house of David, saying, Syria is confederate with Ephraim. That's another term for Israel, which we'll see in just a moment. And his heart was moved, and the heart of his people were moved like the trees of the wood are moved with the wind. At this point in the history of what we know as Israel, the kingdom has been divided. And there's been ongoing hostility and even civil war between what is now the northern kingdom of Israel, or sometimes referred to by its dominant tribe, which was Ephraim, and the capital there, sometimes referred to as Samaria. There's a city of Samaria. And then the southern kingdom still of Judah, which Ahaz rules over, and this is where Jerusalem sits. So there's been ongoing conflict and hostility just within the nation itself. But there's been more going on the world stage. We've talked about this before, but we'll remember the Assyrian Empire has taken over a large portion. It's the dominant empire in the world. And then down under here you got Egypt, and Assyria has designs on Egypt, and Egypt doesn't like that idea. But already, you can see I got a couple little green arrows there to show that already the northern kingdom of Israel, or Ephraim, and the kingdom of Syria, or Damascus, they've already had military incursions from Assyria. They've already been kind of dominated by Assyria in many ways, and they've already been made vassal states of Assyria. That is, they're still allowed to kind of sort of rule themselves a little bit, but they got to pay for it. They're sending money now to Assyria. They're under Assyrian domination, still with their own governments, sort of, but under Assyrian control, and they don't like that. And so they've decided that they're going to band together and try to throw off Assyrian rule and remove themselves from that condition. But they understand they're still not strong enough to do that. So what they want to do then is they have told the southern kingdom of Israel, they've said, we want you to join with us. And Ahaz has said, I'm not going to join with you. They're thinking, let's get the southern kingdom of Judah here, and Judah can come with us, and maybe the three of us together will be strong enough to throw off Assyrian rule. But Judah said, I'm not going to do it. King Ahaz is not going to join in with them. So now Syria and the northern kingdom of Israel have decided to band together against the southern kingdom of Judah. And their plan is, we're going to come in and we're going to fight against you. We're going to take you over. We're going to depose you, King Ahaz. We're going to take you down. And we're going to put our own puppet king in your place who will do what we want. And then we'll get you to come, we'll get the southern kingdom to come with us and fight against Assyria. But again, Ahaz has said, no, I'm not joining with you. And we think, well, that's good because these are, very wicked and immoral nations. And Damascus, Syria, they're pagan. And the northern kingdom of Israel has denied God and is idolatrous. And it's great that Judah would say, no, we're not partnering with you. But don't give Ahaz too much credit yet. Because the reason Ahaz isn't partnering with them is because Ahaz has a plan of his own. And Ahaz has decided, I'm just going to send my own direct envoy up here to the Assyrian Empire myself. I will make my own alliance with Assyria, and Assyria will come in and take care of these two guys for me. Where is God in any of that picture? He's not there at all. And that's the point. So we have the nation that was once the seat of David's throne, and the city of Solomon's glorious temple, that all the world looked to and marveled and saw the glory of God on display. But now this nation is so immoral and politically corrupt that God's not even in the picture. And so when God came to Isaiah and said, I want you to go to King Ahaz, and I have a message for him, this glorious promise that we have, that a virgin will conceive and bear a son, and you'll call his name Emmanuel. That promise wasn't given to Ahaz. That promise was given to the house of David broadly, because Ahaz has already decided to reject God's control. Ahaz has already decided to reject God's way. See, we need the true king. In Isaiah's time, human wisdom is insufficient. Human ways are ineffective. And as you read through Isaiah 7, what you're going to see is that Isaiah is telling Ahaz, all right, God has come to you to say, I need you to trust me. Don't trust Assyria, trust me. And Ahaz essentially says, no, I've got my own plan. And so God says, all right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a son who will be the true and rightful king. And if you read through the rest of Isaiah 7 and think this doesn't sound very Christmassy, it doesn't, because he's saying, here's what's going to happen to you, Ahaz, and to your kingdom as you know it. These people that you're trusting, Assyria, you think they're going to be your saviors? No, they're going to be the roaring flood of an overflowing river that's going to come down. Yeah, they're going to take care of the guys up to the north. Yeah, they will. But they're going to come in here and take care of you too. The ones that you're trusting are going to be the means of your demise because you've rejected me. Human ways, human wisdom in Isaiah's time amount to insurrection. Ahaz was rejecting the rulership of God over his own nation and the rulership of God in his own heart. In Isaiah's time, human ways and wisdom amount to insurrection. We're going to do it our way, not God's way. And the reality is, it's no less true today. As we look at our nation and its direction, anybody besides me concerned? I know we are. What's the solution? I hope you're not pinning your hopes on some candidate. I really hope you're not. We do not know the extent. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. We don't know the extent. We have only a glimpse of the extent of the corruption in our own government. We have no idea how deep and how wide it goes. I heard a former congressional member just this last week make the statement, it's not a swamp, it's an open sewer. I don't care who you want to elect for president. We need bigger help than that. And we need a bigger focus than that. We need the true king. In Isaiah's time, human ways, human wisdom always amounted ultimately to insurrection. We're going to do it our own way. And that's no less true for us today. Before we move forward to Isaiah 9, where have you seen your wisdom fail? I mean, you've seen it, haven't you? Seen mine fail. Where have you seen the ineffectiveness of your own ways? Or as is popularly said, how's that working for you? Your choices for how to run your family, your choices for how to respond in conflict, your choices for how to deal with the depressing and heartbreaking circumstances of life. You've chosen certain ways to respond, and you've chosen certain ways to deal with those things. How are those working for you? You're seeking wisdom and guidance for how to live your life. Where are you seeking that wisdom and guidance, and how's that playing out? We need the true king. And what we see through Isaiah 7 is God's plan that Ahaz is not going to be able to trust in Assyria. Others in Isaiah's day are thinking, well, maybe we would be better off joining in confederacy with the tribes to the north and fighting off Assyria. And God tells them, nope, that's not the solution either. You need to turn to me. And he prophesies to them and tells them, here's what's happening and here's what's going to happen if you turn away from me and pursue your own direction. He says in Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 19, when they say to you, seek unto them that have familiar spirits, you're going to pursue pagan means to find wisdom and guidance. People are going to come to you and say, well, why don't we, let's talk to the psychic. Let's check in with the mediums. Let's read the horoscope. Let's check our stars. Let's see if our crystals align. When they say to you, seek to those that have familiar spirits and unto wizards that peep and mutter, should not a people seek unto the living God? Does it make sense for the living to seek wisdom from the dead? To the law and to the testimony. If they don't speak according to this word, to God's word, it's because there's no light in them, and they will pass through it hardly and be stead and hungry. It will come to pass that when they will be hungry, they will fret themselves and curse their king and their God. They'll look up and see, look over the earth and see the anguish and trouble and dimness, and they will be driven to darkness. That's the ultimate end of pursuing my own way. Individually, as a family, as a church, as a nation. Pursuing human wisdom and human ways above and instead of God's. That's where it lines up. We need the true king. But the beauty of the promise that we see unfolding in Isaiah 9 is that the king is coming. This king is coming. Nevertheless, the dimness will not be as such as was in her vexation. When at first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea, around the Sea of Galilee beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations. God's going to do something in this area that has been so hard hit. You think about that map we just saw, and the areas that he's talking about are those areas that would have been the most victimized by military incursions from Assyria, the most mixed in terms of influences from pagan culture and pagan nations. He calls it Gentile Galilee of the nations, Galilee of the Gentiles. That wasn't a compliment. This isn't Israel. It's been infiltrated, and this isn't God's people. It's been infiltrated and paganized, victimized. We can think now, we have vivid images of our mind of what a war-torn region looks like. We see it every day on the news. And it's those people in the worst place who've experienced the brunt of it. Those that have walked in darkness. One writer said, in darkness, in the shadow of death. Whatever you're going through in your life right now, these people are there and worse. It's these people that live their lives in this darkness, but they've seen a great light. They dwell in the land of the shadow of death, but it's upon them that the light has shined. These people are going to begin to see the working of God. The idea of death in the background here, it's the strongest way we can communicate the calamities of life that they're dealing with. But this picture of light and dawning begins to show us that God is at work. As one said, those that waited through the darkness will come ultimately to the objective reality of dawn and the subjective experience of seeing the light. God's at work. The King is coming. There's something He's doing. You have multiplied the nation and increased the joy. They joy before you. In the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. These pictures here of harvest, that's God's work in creation. Dividing the spoil, that's what you do in military victory. God's work in history. God is working. Verse 5 talks about the burning and the demolishing of military apparatus and military equipment because it's no longer needed, it's no longer necessary. But this victory that you're going to experience and this peace that you're going to know and this deliverance that's coming is not something you're doing yourselves or can do for yourselves. It's something God Himself has accomplished. Verse 4, you have broken the yoke of His burden and the staff of His shoulder, the rod of His oppressor, as in the day of Midian. It's interesting when you go back and read the account of God's deliverance under Gideon. Two of the tribes mentioned here are two of the tribes, Zebulun and Naphtali, are two of the tribes that were involved specifically in Gideon's victory, God's victory through Gideon over their enemies there. You go back to that battle, and the reason he's pointing back to that battle is this was something that was not anything they accomplished themselves. Gideon had 300 guys with clay pots and horns and torches against 100,000 plus, and won by breaking their pots and yelling. God did the work. That's the point. And the deliverance is coming. So how is that going to happen? For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. The government will be upon His shoulder, and His name will be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of His government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon His kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. This true King is coming. We've seen over the last few weeks, we've seen His attributes. These names that are given describe His character. One said, name sums up character. It declares the person. The perfection of this King is seen in His qualification for ruling. He's the Wonderful Counselor. His person and power, He's Mighty God. His relationship to His subjects, He's Everlasting Father. and by the society that his rule creates. He's the Prince of Peace. We've seen his attributes. We've seen who Jesus is, and we understand what we've been given in this Son. We need this true King, and the true King is coming. We've seen his attributes. We've celebrated his advent. To us a child is born, and a son is given. For Isaiah, this was future. For us, it's past and present, because it's happened. If all we know is what Isaiah told us in Isaiah 7:14, that could be the divine Messiah. It could be just a good God-following king. It kind of leans Messiah, where he doesn't give us a lot more than that. But as we read in verse 9 here, we understand, yeah, this is going to be more than just some human. No human could pull this off. No human could match this description. And as we go forward in Isaiah 11, we realize and understand, yes, this is the one who is going to fulfill his promise of one to reign on the throne of David. We've celebrated his advent. We've celebrated his coming into the world. And we will see his accession. What is accession? So he becomes something. Where you take the throne. He's going to be visibly, physically, presently reigning as king on David's throne. That's still to come. You know, when we read through the Gospels, there are many quotations from the Old Testament. And a very significant circumstance arose in Jesus' ministry when he was early in his ministry and was invited in the synagogue to step up and read from Torah. Most likely he would have been presented with a passage to read. But we're told, according to the text, as I understand it, that basically Jesus took the scroll and found the place he chose to read. And he read from Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me, 61 verse 1, to preach good tidings to the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. And you may say, wait a minute, I don't remember Jesus reading all that. He didn't read all of it. He read part of it. He turned to this passage and he read, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. And he stopped. And he said, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. I'm the one. I'm the one that Isaiah promised would come. And what's fascinating is that when you look at the ministry of Jesus in the Gospels, leading up to his sacrificial death and his victorious resurrection, what you'll see is that he fulfilled what he read here. But as we read the rest of the New Testament, what you're going to see is that the rest of those verses are yet to be fulfilled. Notice that he stopped in the middle of what is for us verse 2, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Stop, the next part of the verse, and the day of vengeance of our God. See, those are two things. But they're both required for Christ's ultimate reign as king. Remember what we talked about last week with Jesus as the Prince of Peace. How does he make peace? By subduing his enemies. That's how he makes peace. How do we receive the peace that Jesus brings? By surrendering to him unconditionally. Because he is the true king. And this true king is coming. We will see his accession. We need this true king. What's it going to look like when we have this true king? I think all of us imagine, or try to imagine, or maybe just have given up trying to imagine what it would be like if people just didn't fight. What was that? If the original reference is offensive, please forgive me because I can't remember where this, if it was a song or an old movie or something. I just remember the phrase, what if they gave a war and nobody came? You know? And our world strives for that. People strive for that. Look at situations around the world and say, well, if people would just, mentioned last week, one of the songs that just is the bane of my existence, John Lennon's Imagine. If we could just get people to stop being religious, that would just solve everything. No, it's not the problem. The problem is human wisdom, human ways amount to insurrection against our Creator. I will make my life work for me. And as long as you're not getting in my way of me making my life work for me, then we'll get along just fine. But I decide what life working looks like. And sometimes if I'm really benevolent, I'll decide what life would work best like for you. So I'll just set that up. I remember as a young child, I asked my dad, we were watching, I think, an old World War II movie or something. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, when there's war, and this is a kid question, isn't it? When there's war, why do people kill each other? Why do they have to kill each other? And my dad said, well, look at what Hitler was trying to do. If somebody just walked over there with a plastic hammer and bonked him on the head and told him to stop, you think he would? I don't remember how old I was, but I remember an understanding of the world beginning to form. And realizing and understanding that if a person is going to go their own way, they're either going to change direction on their own, or somebody's going to change direction for them. And if everybody has decided it's about making life work for me, we are never going to get everybody on the same page. Ever. Ever. We need the true king. And the true king is coming. And it's the coming of this true king that is going to enable the promise of Isaiah 2, that nations will beat their swords into plowshares and will not learn war anymore. The United Nations will not accomplish this. Do you understand? Since the United Nations began, there has not been a single year without war somewhere on this planet. Human wisdom and ways are ineffective, inefficient, and ultimately insurrectionist against God, and they don't work. It's submission to God Himself that is the only way peace will ever take place. And it's the presence of God Himself that he's the only condition that will make that possible. Consider this true king and his rule. Verse 6, to us a child is born, a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. You know why kings used to wear robes? When they do a coronation, you know why they put a robe over the king? Well, because it looks cool. Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. Got to have a little pomp and circumstance, sure. But no, this is a heavy robe. And it's placed over the king as a visible and physical and tangible representation and reminder and signifier of the burden and the weight of the government that has been placed upon him. This true king, this child that's been born, this son that is given will gladly and easily bear the weight of government upon his shoulder. He will take that weight upon himself, and it won't be too heavy. He'll be able to do it. Anybody ever looked at the job of President of the United States and said, yeah, everybody ever asked you, would you like to be President of the United States? I can tell you right now, nope. Not for half a second. Not for half a second would I want to do that. Why not? Any number of reasons. I can't handle this bunch, let alone, But the government will be upon his shoulder. He'll take that burden. He'll take that weight, and he will carry it easily. What about this government that he's going to bring? His government will continue to grow and expand, not through conquest and colonization, but in peace. I love the hymn that we sing, like a river glorious is God's perfect peace, over all victorious in its bright increase. Perfect, yet it flows deeper every day. Perfect, yet it floweth fuller all the way. I think I reversed those two. But I love that picture. It's perfect, but it keeps getting better. How does perfect get better? Only God does that. The government that he brings will not stop increasing. It will not stop getting better. It will not stop becoming deeper and broader and fuller. We've seen glimpses in this country here and there of times that brought people together around a common cause, and where you can look at people from, it doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like or what they're wearing or where, it just, you're all Americans, and what a great feeling that is when it happens for a split second every now and then. But what's it going to be when Christ himself sits on the throne of David and rules in righteousness? Of the government, of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end. This rule fulfills the promises that God made, because it's going to sit on the throne of David and upon his kingdom to order it and to establish it. He's going to have a ruling, consistent government. And how will we bring that up? Well, because he's going to really keep everybody under his thumb, and he's going to make sure that he's got the facial recognition to make sure if you're stepping out of line, and social credits, and no. His government will be characterized with judgment and justice. There's a popular pundit today that says, just paraphrase, government stinks at everything. It pretty much does. But that's because we don't have the true king. His government will be wise. his government. He will establish and order his kingdom with judgment, wisdom, understanding, stuff that actually works, policies that actually make sense, policies that are actually clear and true and consistent, top to bottom. And a government that is characterized by justice. That which is right. We long for that. We look at our nation as it sits now and look at the way that things are happening. I watch the way that people in power are using the power that they have. And my heart cries out, God, this is unjust. But when the true king comes, it's a kingdom of perfect justice. Boy, it's going to be a great 8 years, isn't it? Because I guarantee it, a king like that's going to get reelected, I guarantee. How long does this government last? From henceforth, even forever. So according to that preacher, you can't impeach him, and he ain't going to resign. But I'm ready for that last week. I'm ready for that now. That's the king that's coming. That's the rule that he's bringing. That, when we sing those Christmas hymns, joy to the world, the Lord is come. That's what we're singing about. Not the coming in the manger, but the coming in the clouds. Not the first advent, but his accession to the throne. The day he comes with clouds and sets things right. Well, how can this happen? How can we bring this about? Well, you and I need to work really hard. You and I need to... You got groups that say, well, we gotta be busy about feeding the hungry and healing the sick and curing social ills and make that our life's work. That's not a bad thing. Okay? Don't hear me say that's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. When Jesus said, the poor you have with you always, he wasn't saying the poor you have with you always, so don't worry about it. No, he was saying in that setting, you'll continue to have opportunity to minister to the poor. She's only got this one opportunity to minister to me in this special way. The poor will be there tomorrow. Minister to them tomorrow. Continue to minister to the poor. Yes, do those things. But understand, that is not ushering in the kingdom. We need to take the gospel to every clime that we can, every person that we can. Yes, that's not bringing in the kingdom. How does this happen? The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. This will happen because God's going to do it. God's going to get this done. And it's the zeal of the Lord of hosts that will do this. This is his desire. This is his passion. This is what he is zealous for. And do you remember what we talked about last week with the idea of zeal? As it shows up here, it's the word jealousy. God knows the one thing that will save those that he loves is his righteous rule. And he is jealously opposed to anything that stands against that, including the barriers you erect in your own heart. This true king is coming. We've seen his attributes. We've celebrated his advent. We will see his accession. This is what we await. This is what we desire. So for you, how have you responded to his first coming? Because what he calls us to do with his first coming is repent and believe. Believe, repent, recognize the payment that he has made for us, turn from my way to follow him. That's the response that he wants from this first coming. How's your response been to this point? And a follow-up question to that is, how are you living in light of his second coming? If he's the true king, then he's the true king now, even though we don't see him physically reigning on David's throne yet. That's coming, but he is the true king. And he calls for the same true allegiance that he will call for then. So are there areas in your life right now where you're still resisting the righteous rule of the true king in your own life? Because now is the time to submit yourself to him. Now is the time to line up with the rule, the righteous and just rule, the peaceful rule of the true king. The king's coming. Are you following this king? Are you following somebody else that's following this king? Are you seeking to lead somebody to follow you while you follow this king? That's the right response. It's one thing to look around us and say, man, this place is a mess. It is. But we need to look around us and understand the reason this place is a mess is because we as human beings have rejected the true king. And the only right response is to say to one another, the king is coming. Let's worship him. Let's serve him. Let's make our life about him. Because when he comes, that's what his kingdom is. It's about him. Let's line up for that kingdom now. King's coming. Let's be ready to greet him.